right, we are back. It is time for the most entertaining segment of the day, in my opinion. We've got Mr. Jim Gio, who is the Director of Information Systems at Triangle Package Machinery Company. And, Jim, for the people who might not be familiar with you, you've been on the podcast a couple other times. Can you tell them, a little bit about who you are, maybe what you do, and maybe a little bit about Triangle?
Sure. So as Michael said, my name is Jim Gio. I've been with Triangle Package Machinery Company for close to 8 years now. Triangle Package Machinery has been around for 100 years, and we're a manufacturer of custom-built machines for packaging machines for the food service industry. So we've been doing that in the Chicago area for the past 100 years. About 8 years ago, I was brought on board to replace their existing ERP system, which was more of a job management system instead of an ERP system. But I was brought on board to replace that with the newest version of that software. After looking at it, I introduced them to Dynamics NAV at the time, and after a little bit of an uphill battle, they actually realized that the product they wanted to go with wasn't as good as NAV, and we ended up going with NAV 2016 at the time. So since then, it's been one of the president of our company, Brian. It's been one of I know his prouder moments. I know he's done a lot of great things for us. I know that bringing in this ERP system is one of the things he does consider to be a big success over time as well. Very happy with the purchase of the product and the company's dedication to upgrading it, to always trying to figure out ways to use it and integrate into it. Definitely shows that even at the senior level, there is a commitment to wanting to use this product more and their faith in what it does for us.
Great. Yeah, so the first time we had you on the show, you guys were just coming off using NAV 2016 and switched to Business Central 14 on-premise. And we'll link to that in the show notes about how, what decisions were made to make that switch. And we know you kept BC 14 because you wanted to keep objects at the time and just kind of basically do a basic upgrade. So we'll link to that. But now you're going from Business Central version 14 to Business Central version 21. Still on-premise, but hosted in a private Azure cloud, correct?
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about why you chose to stay on-premise, hosted in the Azure cloud, as opposed to going full cloud.
So that's a great question, and that's a question I ask myself on occasion as well. But really what it comes down to for us is, we set a path that we wanted to make sure that we didn't let the ERP system get stagnant. So we wanted to make sure that every 2 to 3 years we were reviewing it and doing the upgrades because there are a lot of features that come out of it, and things that are customizations and add-ons turn into inherent capabilities as you do these upgrades. So those are things that we want to always make sure that we're staying current on. Now, when it comes to staying on premise or going into the cloud, for us, it really had to do with the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, we did not have a true ERP system up until about 8 years ago. And as you can imagine, that's a very scary undertaking, and you learn a lot about yourself when you're doing that and about your business. And so, the old cliche of you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And then as the ERP starts to uncover these things for you and you're finding out more and more about yourself, you're like, okay, well, we can change that. But unfortunately, there has to be some form of change management that goes into all of this, because if you just say, okay, you've done it for this way for, 100 years, or at the time, 93 years, and now we're saying, okay, stop. You have to do it this way now. That's unreasonable, and you'll shut the doors. And in a company like ours, it's not how we operate. I mean, we're a family-run company, so we try to, respond to our employees' needs and make sure that people feel comfortable coming into work. I mean, if you change the way that their whole life is, that's not really a good environment to work. And plus, they're going to hate the system. So, part of what we did was we brought in NAV at the time, and we customized it to fit our needs. And over the years, with each upgrade, we removed customizations, and we have tried to make it more out of the box. And adapt our processes into more of business standard, keeping in line with, making sure that we can still process things, but are we doing it efficiently? Are we doing it cost effectively? With this latest upgrade, we still have a lot of little tweaks that we've put into the system that we want to maintain. And we really looked at it very hard of, do we just start over and start with a clean slate? And worked with Ken a lot on that. There was a lot of Excel spreadsheets that, your eyes go crossed after looking at them and seeing all of the things that are in there. But as you're going through those objects and you're talking to people and like, no, I need that field still. And you're looking at it going, well, it's really not a bad field to have. It actually helps the business. And I hope Microsoft puts that in one day. And you start to go through these things, then you look at other things, you're like, okay, that's a bad process. Let's take that out. Let's figure out the right way to do it. So I would never say that, we went through that whole process of figuring out, if we were going to do an upgrade or if we were going to do a clean install. We ended up going with doing the upgrade because it seemed like the easier path. But what it did provide us with is a good opportunity to really look at enhancements that we forgot about. And when speaking, to Ken about it, it's like, okay, no, that one can come out, pull that out. And really it's forced us to really look at it. So not just keep stacking on old technology. So even though we didn't do the upgrade, or I'm sorry, we didn't do the clean install, we did the upgrade. I think it was a very good exercise to find out how we wanted to move forward.
Yeah.
Now my goal is within the next couple of upgrades, I'm not gonna say by the next one, but within the next, 5 to 6 years, I do want to have us into a full cloud environment and minimize the amount of infrastructure on our side that's needed, and just and overall, make it easier than we decide to make that upgrade. It's just a matter of let's do it.
Ken, do you think it's more common for companies to go the route of Jim and Triangle to where they reevaluate and they choose to upgrade as opposed to re-implement the software when making, when going from an object-based version to an extensions add-on version?
Yeah, it is a part and parcel of going from an older version of NAV or early version of Business Central with objects. When you go to whether it's 2022 wave 1 or wave 2 on premise or BC Online, yes, you have to go through that process of evaluating what are all the add-on solutions we have in here. Do we need them still? What are all the extensions or the customizations that we've done? And do we take the time to convert those into extensions? And how do we convert those into extensions, right? There's so many variables in this upgrade that it's been very, for us, kind of, challenging too, to understand what are all the possible options out there and then communicate that and then work with the users to ultimately decide. And I would tell you that it is there is no right answer.
Right.
Every company has a different environment with different data and requirements and customization levels. So you really have to evaluate it on a case-by-case basis. And I would say that Jim and his team at Triangle are taking a very smart approach by, like he said, not trying to do too much at once.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you think about it, a 100-year-old company that up until 8 years ago didn't have a full ERP, integrated ERP solution. And we're talking like they're taking their time by going from Business Central 14 to 21 on premise, and then maybe a few years down the road to BC Online. But think about that in terms of the big picture. That's rapid change to implement a fully integrated ERP, upgrade 2-3 times within a span of 8 to 10 years, and get to where you're fully deployed on a cloud-based model that's upgrading itself with customizations every month, right? I mean, and I think a lot of people try to make that huge leap all the way over in one jump, and that's tough.
Yeah.
So and maybe that's the conservative side of me, but that methodical step-by-step approach, I think, is the smart, most least disruptive.
Yeah. Yeah, so would you say most people running like NAV 2016 should always go maybe to BC 14 first with objects and then figure out the plan, to eventually move to an all extension?
At this point, no, because remember back, you've been running 14 for a year and a half,
Mhm.
has it been?
Yes.
And now at this point, I think Business Central 14, right, that's now been out almost 5 years. So now at this point, if you're starting something today from NAV 2016,
You almost
maybe,
have to go to full extension.
well, you
software.
probably want to go to full extension, whether that's on premise or online.
Right.
That's still another decision that you can make. But yeah, every 6 months, Microsoft is putting out a major release now. So there's new changes. Thankfully, they've kept a migration path from 14 to 21. So, thankfully that's there. But it's, again, it's a decision that unfortunately has to be evaluated on a case by case basis.
Gotcha. Do you have, Jim, do you have more security concerns with Business Central full cloud deployment as opposed to a hybrid deployment as what you're going to now?
I do. I mean, right now I have control over the security of our data center and of our clients, and how we connect to it. We are a pretty locked down shop when it comes to things. So, that does bring in a little bit of a security issue for that. That will definitely be something that we do look at as time goes on. But at the same time, depending on where we're hosted at, I mean, they're going to have, SLAs that we have to follow, and we're just gonna see what that means, for us in the future, and see if that's something that we can work with and if they're comfortable with. But right now, like I said, we're very happy with being on premise. We have the infrastructure for it, and it does allow for a little more flexibility, I feel. So, I think once we get into that full cloud environment in a few years, we'll be a different company though. We're going to have more standard business practices. I mean, to Ken's point, I mean, every upgrade, we're pulling something out and we're changing something. And as a company, we're evolving daily. And the use of the system was, it went from something that was sort of, I don't want to say like an add-on, because it's really not. I mean, your ERP system's never an add-on, but it's something that was just there. Now it's part of people's daily lives, and it's a core function of our business. And it's looking at, can you do this in NAV? How is NAV going to handle this? In our case now, Business Central. And those are good questions. As a director of IT, I love when people are going, how would I do this in BC? Great question. Let's work through that. Before, it used to be, we're trying to do this, or we do it like this. Make BC do this. Okay. And unfortunately, just to get them into the system and using the system, you have to do that little bit of a bend. But what you hope for is, if once you have them in, then the pendulum shifts. So like I said, it goes from make BC do this to we're going to do this because this is how BC does it.
Gotcha.
And I think that's what I love about what we're doing. And really, I have to always credit the team at Triangle. I mean, I have a great user base. I mean, they really own the system. I have the luxury of just maintaining it, if you would, and driving initiatives, and trying to respond to requests. But I mean, my end users are amazing. I mean, they really took ownership in the system. We definitely empower them to have that ownership, and that really grows the system because they're identifying, okay, how do I do this? I mean, one of the gentlemen that I work with is constantly online, and he'll come in and go, all right, so I posted something in a forum, and some guy from France just got back to me with an answer of how they're accomplishing this. So I mean, that's something I love to see that my end users are doing. So I mean, really, I mean, I'm responsible for calling the plays and saying, okay, we're going to go do this, but they're actually the ones running this down the field, and they're really the people that make this system move forward and progress. I mean, like I said, I have a phenomenal user base, and really, the system would sit stagnant if it was just an IT solution.
Nice.
So that's a huge part of the success of our system at Triangle.
Nice. I think before we move forward in this segment, we should all drink to low cost upgrades in the future.
Low cost upgrade.
Cheers.
Cheers. So Kim, when you first talked to Jim, how'd you feel? Did you think that, could you believe it? They were running a basic ERP?
Size and the volume that they were doing, no, it was kind of hard to believe, but it was a good group to work with and didn't have to do much convincing to make the change, so
Absolutely.
it was good.
Yeah, and I think that's probably pretty true for most companies, that the users need to own it, right? To get the most value out of it. Because if it's just something that they're forced to do every day and they view it that way, they're not going to try to, proactively think of how can this be used better? How can we use this, get more leverage out of it? And it's like us, we're here to help, but it's up to the end users,
Right,
to make the most out of it.
I'm curious, when you guys first decided to make the jump from like NAV to BC14, or even from the older ERP to NAV 2016, and maybe you don't know this, but do you think most users were on board with change, or was it kind of difficult and they figured we don't need to change, it's working, how we are?
Oh, I do know this. I mean, there was pitchforks and torches waiting for me. I mean, and to that point, I mean, people are, change is a very scary thing. I mean, and the system that we were using was a glorified green screen system. It had not been upgraded, I want to say, in over 15 years, and I may be even being kind saying 15. So there was a lot of inherent knowledge, and these people, are very, very good at their jobs. So they don't need the system. The system is just a way of like tracking a few things that I did. And it's something just for the accountants to be able to reconcile. And it's not how I do my job. So trying to like put them into this system, which, like I said, I'm going from a green screen to, this disco ball that is, Dynamics, NAV at the time, just bright colors and things like that. And they're like, and it was a bit of a learning curve, and the other thing is, and this was a very hard thing for us, and it's one of the things that I can't stress enough when any implementation is knowing the process that you're actually doing. And most of the people that were in our old system knew the keystrokes. So they knew if I hit, Q and then the plus sign and enter, that takes me to where I need to be. What does Q plus sign enter do? I don't know.
Yeah.
Gets me to where I need to be, where I can enter this. And they don't realize that it's actually logging these transactions and it's doing all of these things. So there's a whole process to that implementation and teaching people, that it's not just so much hitting the keys. What are we doing? And let's walk that through and let's map out that process. And that's a very hard thing to do. Because then as you're mapping out that process, you're finding out how many times that process splinters off.
Right.
The biggest thing I always tell people is don't plan based on the exception. I mean, everyone's, well, when this happens, okay, fine. How often does that happen? Once a year. I don't care.
Right.
Tell me how we do it every day.
Yeah.
And that was a very hard thing too, is don't tell me about the exception. Let's go with the standard and mapping out the process and making the people realize that their knowledge of that process is extremely important to us. And just because I'm putting it into the system doesn't mean you've gained or you've lost value. You've actually gained value because you're making the system. You're telling me how it flows. You're showing me this process. Now, anybody that's intelligent enough to do that, I can actually put you onto something else. And I think that's what you have to really stress to people is that you have a great knowledge. You've got us to this far with what you've done. Now imagine if I take that off of your plate and I can give you to the next thing. What's the next phase that, in your process that's driving you crazy? Imagine if I freed you up and you could fix that.
Right.
So it's presenting it in such a way that they realize that I'm not taking away anything from you, because people are very proud of what they have and there's an ownership to it. And sometimes there's even a security to it of, I know how to do this. And you're going to take it away and put it in the system. Yes, because you're more valuable than just a key puncher that just does. I want to take that knowledge out of you and I want to see what you can develop for me in the next part. And what downstream can you fix for me? And that's really that humble approach of saying, we don't know the answers. And I think that's a huge part of it. And people can usually view IT and the solutions that we bring as that we're trying to tell you how to do your job. No, I want to tell you how to do your job. You do your job. I want to help you not do busy work with your job. I want to allow a skilled, knowledgeable person to do things that actually require skill and knowledge. Let the system do the stuff that's tedious. And I think it's showing people that I'm not taking, I want to, really use the knowledge that you have and expand on what you have, not just keep you, stunted where you're at. So it's hard. I'm not going to say that it's easy, but I think once you get over that big hurdle, then it just starts to go. And having a good user base that sees changes, they become your best advocates. I could say BC, NAV, I could say anything's great all I want. Great, it's the IT guy. It's his job to do it. If I don't like it, he doesn't have a job. Not 100% true, but at the end of the day, they don't trust it. But now if their coworker loves it and he's saying, it is that good, it does help me, my job got a ton easier with this. That's the best advertisement I can get for the system. And that's the best sort of advocate that I could have, or the end user is the best advocate for the system. Like I said, I could preach it all day. They're the ones who have the better respect of their coworkers, and they're going to be the ones that go, George loves it, then it must be good, because George doesn't love anything. And so that's to me was a good path, or a hard path. But now people look forward to the upgrades.
So at the end of the day, appreciate the people you work with, and user training is very important.
Oh God, yeah.
Gotcha. Not too bad. So Ken, what would you say is one of the biggest challenges from going from BC 14 on-prem to BC 21? Is it figuring out the objects and converting them to extensions and whatnot?
Yeah. Like I said, it's a tedious process, because to Jim mentioned, the spreadsheets, right? Till your eyes cross. Well, you have to, if you're going to do it right, you need to understand what are all the customizations that have been done, what custom tables exist, what custom fields have been added to each table, what add-ons have been put in there. And then really a decision has to be made. Do we need this? Yes or no? So that, because that has to be transitioned into an extension. Right. And we want a lighter extension if we can. We don't want to just bring over all this stuff. Right. So that is usually a part of this process, is detailing all that out. Now, that's one piece of it. The second piece is the fact that in this example, this is what we call a hybrid upgrade, because we're taking all of the standard base data and we're upgrading it. So all of your ledger entries, item ledger entries, GL entries, posted documents, everything, all of the data. But we're not bringing all of the customizations or add-on solutions. And those may have had some data in it. So you have to evaluate the fact that, okay, well, we're going to drop this extension and this extension, or this app or add-on, and then we're going to drop these customizations. So we're going to lose that data. Is everyone good with that? Yep. Okay, great. Now, what new apps are we going to use? Mm-hmm. Because for BC, right, there's new versions of new apps that, and a lot of partners' apps have changed. A good example is you guys run, right, as an engineer to order mm-hmm. manufacturing company. Do you use both the jobs module and the manufacturing module?
Yes.
Well, one of the add-ons that is in there is the one called Job Manager, that adds a layer of bells and whistles on top of the jobs module. That app has been redesigned for BC. So a new app. So there's a little bit of training that we're going to have to do, and make sure that we've got all the data upgrading correctly. So there, behind the scenes, there's a lot of technical things that we have to be aware of, and we need the user. So what happens is we get a backup of the 14 database, right? We go behind the curtain mm-hmm. and there's a bunch of whistles and smoke blowing all over the place. And you open the curtains and there is that database, but now upgraded to BC 21. Now what we need is the users to get in there and test everything.
Yeah.
In theory, it should kind of work the same as it did before. You're going to see some things are missing or they look a little bit different. But for the most part, the processes should flow similarly.
So are you evaluating the processes too during an upgrade, or is that?
Well, for mostly it's an apples to apples thing.
Right.
Gotcha.
However, there's these exceptions that we're gonna note and we'll say, hey, this area here changed a little bit. It changed how, I'm just making this up, like assembly orders. There's some changes to how assembly orders get processed. So we want you guys to pay special attention to focus on assembly orders and make sure that your process is gonna work, right, correctly.
So a funny one that I had for this whole thing is, Ken mentions like the Excel spreadsheet, with all the stuff on it. And like I said, it's very cumbersome, but the easiest thing that I could equate it to is like if you were to find a storage bin with old clothes in it and you're going through this bin and you're like, why did I buy this? Like, and you're looking at this stuff and then you're going, okay, well, that coat still fits and it's okay. And you're going to this like, really? I had cuffed Cavaricis on, huh? No, those need to go away. So, I mean, I think that's really what this comes down to is you look at some of these upgrades and or these enhancements, I should say, and you're like, why did I put that in? And you're like, oh my God, I forgot about that. And that was like a goal. And there was things that were on our list. And I'm like, that was something we just needed for go live. Everyone was like, we got to have it. And we used it for about a month. And you just start to, you hate to say there's a bit of nostalgia to it, but like, as you're going through it, you start to remember like, yeah, that was the thing everybody told me I needed.
Some things are impulse buying, basically. Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. And then you're looking at it going, yeah, that should not come back. And God, I hope it never comes back. And like it's a mullet. I don't want it to ever come back. Just leave it wherever it was in the 80s.
Kind of hope the mullet comes back.
There you go.
I'm not working with a lot.
And to continue his analogy in terms of that upgrade, so you open that storage bin, you open that storage locker or whatever, and there's all these boxes in there, and they're kind of old boxes. Some are torn, right? And what you want to do is you want to take all that stuff out and you have to put it into new bins, right? And you don't want to have as many bins because you got to buy the bins and then you got to haul the bins. So ideally you want to go through those boxes and clean out all the stuff you don't want so that you're just going to keep the stuff that you do want and put it into the new bins.
Yeah. So
the
it's like
plastic seal top bins.
It's like that old AMC show where they have like, we're keeping this is going in the garbage.
Right.
And this you're selling or whatever. Yeah. So
Now what happens in the real world? In the real world, you open up the door, you start going through a couple boxes, you make some decisions, you put some stuff into the bins, and then a lot of times you get tired.
Yeah.
And you say, you know what? Just you lift up the box, you turn it upside down and dump it into the new bin.
Yeah.
And you say, just take it. Just take it all. We'll deal with it later. Right? So that's where it gets tricky is like, you got to really be focused and make those decisions. But, or you just say, you know what, let's just grab it. We think it's mostly good. Put it all into the new bins and move it along. Right.
And sometimes it purge itself out. Over time, here in our case, we came up with a list that, we felt that, yes, a lot of it we verified that we are still using, but through the course of, the upgrade, we're going to find new and better ways to accomplish the same goal, hopefully with less steps. And those enhancements are going to go away, So, that's my goal is that each time we do an upgrade, the amount of enhancements, that we have in there gets reduced significantly. And that at some point in time, you're just running a standard out of the box solution with extensions and, certified add-ons, not these little tweaks that we've done to it. It's going to be a process. And, like I said, for what we do and, just being a custom machine manufacturer that we are, it's not easy. Because, as I mentioned earlier, you can't build for the exception, but unfortunately, the majority of my day, believe it or not, for our business is an exception. Everything's a custom machine. So it's very similar to what you guys do. You have an out of the box software. And then you have to build it to the customer. And it's really no different than what we're doing. So, it's going to be about this much time. It's going to cost about this much money. And based on what I'm hearing, these are the things we know you're going to need. And then there's the tweaks. Yeah. We're no different than that with the machines that we build because we don't build a machine that is on the shelf. We build it to our customer specification. So there's always going to be that, I don't want to call it chaos, but there's always that uncertainty in what we're doing. And the fact that, Business Central has the capability to adapt to a lot of that for us and has tools built into it that we can manipulate, I shouldn't say manipulate, but we can utilize to help us minimize the ripple effect of those anomalies in our or irregularities, I should say, in our order cycles. That helps us a lot. So, as time goes by, we're going to keep I shouldn't say reinventing, but reevaluating our system and just saying, okay, this is a way that we can achieve that. And as the system keeps progressing, it comes with more inherent features that address those issues for us.
Sure.
So it's nice to see that the system does do a lot of that, and that I can remove customizations because that means that it grew as much as we did.
Have you been on Microsoft App Stores yet?
I'm not.
Have you seen how many apps there are for Business Central?
5,000?
Over 3,100
Really?
right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's going fast. It's
Yeah.
going fast. Yeah, you might get addicted to it.
Yeah. So here we are. We're sitting here at the end of 2022. First quarter 2023, users are going to be in there testing. Hopefully get it fully deployed in the second quarter, be up and running. And then, our goal, right, is you're going to be back here a year from now for your fourth annual visit to the podcast and be able to share some of those experiences that you had moving from 14 to 21, and then sharing, kind of looking forward to the next chapter.
Tell us about how easy those upgrades are.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Most definitely. Yes.
Good times, good times. Well, I've got no more for Mr. Jim. How about you?
No, I'm good. I just want to say thank you, Jim, for joining us again. I think that this has to be super helpful for users who are listening. I know that there are thousands of people out there who are going through or about to go through the same thing that you've gone through. So hearing this from other people and seeing that, okay, what they're experiencing is not unusual.
Right.
Has to be pretty comforting.
I would imagine that it is. I mean, that's, to me, that's a huge part of this, because I think when you're doing these types of, implementations or upgrades, I mean, it gets so frustrating and you start to feel like, why are we doing it? And it just becomes like, you feel like you're kind of this oddity. And then when you find out, no, it's pretty normal. You're going through the same pains that everybody else is going through. It's good. And, as I've talked to other customers and things like that, you find out it's like, no, here's how we got through that, or here's how we did this. And it to me, it's very helpful, just in general that, there is a very good community out there for Business Central online that has a lot of answers. Companies like yours, I mean, here for our needs, and I'll always remember this when we were looking for companies to choose. This is going back to when we actually did the selection. We interviewed with a few other companies who I'm not going to name, but one of the things that really attracted us to SSI was that, yes, of course, Kim, but for our company, who is a family-owned company, and that is, it's a very, when people say family-owned company, what does that mean? It can mean a lot of things. In our case, it is a value system, and it's how we feel about our employees. It's how we feel about our vendors. It's how we feel about our customers. It's a care. It's not just so much we buy this from you, you need to do this. It's not so much we sold this to you, it's your problem. There's a back and forth relationship there, and that's really how we treat everybody that we deal with is as a family, and it's part of our family. And so when we were introduced to SSI, I had a previous relationship with them, but when I brought you guys in, that was one of the overwhelming comments from our team that was picking the ERP was that NAV seemed like the best one, and SSI seems like the company to do it for us because they seem to fall in line with our values, and that's a huge part of this whole thing, is having a partner in this that you trust, and it's not just, well, if you buy this upgrade, this will work. No, okay, that's not the way it works. There is that back and forth. I love when I come to you guys going, okay, somebody asked me this question. yeah, you really don't want to do that. I love when I get that kind of feedback because it's easier just to charge me for it. It's better to tell me that's not the greatest thing you want to do. It's not the best thing you could do. It's not the best path you could take. So I think that that makes this process a ton easier is when you have a good relationship and you have a good partner that is not just pushing software. You're trying to grow with us and help us, and that really makes this whole process a lot easier. I mean, I like I said, I have to credit my phenomenal end users, support from, the executive team, but I mean, support that we get from SSI. It's all part of it. I mean, I know this, it's a good commercial, Ken, I expect a little discount now after this, but teasing.
I will drink to that, Jim. Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Yeah, I got
I love it. We appreciate you coming on.
No problem. Thanks, everyone. Have a great Christmas.